in some ways, the Chancellor has more room for manoeuvre than perhaps he would have expected, say, 6 months ago.
That's correct. The economy, as you touched on, is in pretty strong shape. It has to be said that government borrowing is still high, but over the first 10 months of this fiscal year, it's half the level of a year ago. So it's clearly on an improving trend. So compared to 6 months ago, the Chancellor probably has about £25 billion more room to play with than he probably expected. Now, the two key issues this week, I would say, first, issues linked to the war. And that's an immediate issue, whether it's to help refugees or increase defence spending. But the second issue that attracts most of the attention is to address the imminent cost of living crisis. And that cost of living crisis has three parts to it: higher inflation, rising fuel and energy prices, and also higher taxes. The Chancellor can't address the inflation part. Therefore, this Wednesday, he has to address the other two parts: the rising energy and fuel prices, and also national insurance and other taxes.
So getting rid of green taxes on our electricity bills, that is 25% of the bill goes in those social obligation and green subsidies. Another 5%, of course, is VAT. I mean, they're the areas, surely, the Chancellor needs to look at if households are going to get real help.
OK, well, let's take it in two parts, because I also think the national insurance part is very important. But if we take the energy and the fuel part first, environmental levies are £9.2 billion over the next year. That's on average £325 per household. I'm very much in favour of the green agenda, but I think the whole issue that's come to the fore now is about people's ability to pay. So if those environmental levies are to go, then they need to probably be transferred to general taxation. That's the challenge. What the Chancellor will focus on probably this week in terms of the whole fuel side is in terms of the fuel subsidies and fuel bills. Now, if he wanted to be bold, he could suspend them for a temporary period, but then if they're reintroduced, it's a pain and it's going to hit people then. But if we take the current price of petrol, it's £1.65 per litre. Of that £1.65, 85.5 pence is tax, fuel levies and VAT. The Chancellor has indicated through the media that he's prepared to knock 5p off, add in the VAT, that's 6 pence off, so that price goes down from 165 to 159. So it's a small, but for lots of people, important impact. But there is much he can do, and indeed he probably should be bolder than he would likely be. Then we've got the taxing side as well. Shall I go on to that now, Nigel? Because I think that's where the real issue is. He shouldn't have, in my view, introduced the new national insurance tax increase. For workers, it's going up from 12 to 13.5%. For employers, it's going up from 13.8 to just over 15%. So 1.25% for workers and 1.25% for companies as well. Now, I think he should actually reverse that. He won't do that. He could delay it. But if he's not going to do that, then at the very least, I think he should actually try and raise the threshold at which people start to pay it. For instance, if you're paying income tax, your income tax is worked out over the course of the whole year, but it works out that over a normal week, you have to earn £242 in the new fiscal year before you start paying income tax. But you will start to pay the new national insurance if you're only earning £190 per week. So he could, and I think he probably will, raise that threshold. But coming back to your point, I think he's got lots to do. He can do something on levies and fuel, and also I think he can and he should, and I hope he will do something on the overall tax side, particularly national insurance.
Well, certainly, getting that threshold in line, that would be simplification, which I was urging in my talk up at the start. Yeah. A final thought, please, Gerard. Looking ahead, the growth forecasts for the years to come are dismal. I can't think of any other word to describe it. What is it about this government that makes them so reluctant, it seems, to cash in that Brexit dividend and to start getting rid of excessive EU regulation? It could be, for example, Solvency II in the insurance sector. Is it because they've been totally consumed by the pandemic, or don't they really believe in supply-side reform?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of institutional constraints. The independent OBR that produces the forecast is very cautious about the growth outlook. The Treasury, which combines a budget office and an economic office, so to speak, is always about balancing the budget, although they don't do that very well. In a nutshell, what we need is a pro-growth economic strategy that combines that Brexit dividend, and it means about the way to get the deficit down is not to raise taxes. The way to get the deficit down is not to have austerity. We do borrow sensibly at low rates. We could have done that better by borrowing longer term. But the key issue is this. If the choices are borrowing, raising taxes, austerity, or going for growth, you should go for growth. And I think that we need to have more of a pro-growth economic strategy, making the economy more competitive. That requires lower, not higher taxes. I don't think we're going to get that this week. The Chancellor might well touch on it, but maybe we'll have to wait for the budget later this year for the first real steps, hopefully, towards achieving that.